Good morning. My name is Barbara With, and it is June 4th, 2022. And you are here with me and the Party of 12, a delightful and sometimes hilarious group of souls working in the afterlife for world peace and to help us here on Earth birth a new humanity. And when I say us, I mean the Psychic Sorority, which is a group of us who've been meeting for decades now. Our recent incarnation is Saturday mornings at 9 o'clock Central. And you can find all the scheduling up on my website, Party of 12, partyof12.com. And today we have Linda in Colorado and Jojo in Ontario joining us for a very spirited discussion, I'm sure is going to be, and I'm looking forward to this channel very much, about why imagination is more important than knowledge. So welcome to the party. And hi, Jojo. Hi, Linda. Welcome this morning.
Yeah, some pretty tough things going on.
Isn't
for
that
everybody? For everybody, I think.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think the more we do this work and open up to the bigger picture, the more we feel the whole, without trying to get sucked into it, if you want to say that, or to take on the suffering aspect of all of that, but to just be aware and feeling and sending out our good vibes or whatever you want to say. So yeah, it's complex, isn't it?
Isn't everything about conflict? Ultimately?
Our life on Earth.
Yeah, that's what I mean. I was thinking about that in thinking about imagination, because I wanted to expand upon that great question you asked last week and got me thinking, and then the channeling from it and how they described imagination. This week, as I've been pondering and being open to hearing what information comes of this, I've begun to notice how much imagination takes place in everyday life. First of all, the definitions of imagination. Imagination, taking image. What I think is very interesting is, first of all, image, the meaning that we're pertinent to us is an optically formed duplicate, counterpart, or representative reproduction of an object, especially an optical reproduction of an object formed by a lens or mirror.
Ooh, the lens.
And here, so what it's saying is, it's like how the eye works, right? Where it takes the image and it crosses it upside. So whatever's in the source is being projected into the lens. But here's what's interesting about the definition of imagination. The formation of a mental image or concept of that which is not real or present. Imagination is more important than knowledge is only part of Einstein's quote. And the whole quote is, imagination is more important than knowledge, for knowledge is limited, whereas imagination embraces the entire world, stimulating progress and giving birth to evolution. Imagination really is compassion. It's a piece of compassion down there. As it's moving up, it's reading the mathematics of what's coming off that wave, right? The first step in the primordial soup of emotion. So it's taking that knowledge of what that math is. This is the math of the table. That, I guess that would be knowledge. Moving it up into the intuition, which is then impelling it to go be a table. And then it gets up into the intellect. And the first intellectual imagination is, I am a table, because this mathematics of the table are coming up from within us. But when it gets to that point where it's set in image, right, where it's like an optical double, it crosses, it turns 180 degrees, and then it becomes, that is a table. So this seems to me This is all imagination.
Understood it. Imagination does take all of that, takes the knowledge gleaned through the senses in the now, in the math, and then envisions or images the next thing to do. And if it's being guided by intuition, if we're actually listening, aligned with the compassion of intuition, then that's going to be a good outcome,
Right.
a better outcome for the good of the whole, versus if we're denying or we're suppressing the intuition and we're focused on, well, there's plenty to focus on in the world, in the now, that's not good. If we're focused on that and we're imaging more of that, then that's what will go into the math and a roundabout again. Do you think it's right to say that as the wave comes up, it goes through the subconscious part of the intellect first, like I am a table, then into the conscious, now there's the table, and then into the superconscious, what are we going to do with that table? Kind of thing. Imagine, okay, that's a nice table, where will I put it? Or, I don't know, that might be too simplistic.
Well, I have a tendency to, first of all, think that super conscious, I think intellectual activity either decreases or it transforms into something less than what was going on in the conscious, where everything was like, so there might not be anything, just it goes back to the I am of a table. If we step away and just look at the whole system, there's no judgment of it. It's just how, it's the part of how the creation of the physical existence happens. It's the free will that throws a wrench into being aligned to compassion, because the free will can also use imagination. For example, I had someone contact me this week to tell me, it doesn't matter what the details are, who they were, but they were convinced that I felt a certain way about them. And then they had to leave because they could never see that hurt on my face again and know they hurt me that much. There's a lot of imagination going on in that person's brain, because I had no idea what they were talking about. I mean, I could, if I thought about it, I could piece together where they might have been triggered, what point they might have been triggered at, but it didn't have anything to do with the reality that I had been experiencing through that. It was not about them. But then again, there was my own trigger. So knowing that my trigger was you're using your imagination to create these things that aren't in the present moment. They're not in the senses. I think that was an interesting
Good
definition, that if they're in your senses, then you're in the present moment, right? Because that's our senses that are projecting and perceiving. Our senses are perceiving back, and the separation takes place as we're in these bodies. How miraculous. Oh my gosh. And also there's another, I have another friend who has had a conflict years ago called Sally, the Woman Who Hates Me. And she had spent a great deal of time telling us about how much this woman didn't like her, like maybe years. And then one day actually had another encounter with her. Maybe the first encounter she was triggered, or who knows why. She got her imagination, right? Her free will. It was like, no. Met her 2 years later, and the woman was so warm and friendly, and I can't wait, let's have lunch. And it's like, Sally, the Woman Who Hates Me. We cannot make these kinds of assumptions. Our imaginations can take over with that free will. And that's the biggest challenge, I think, in the whole system. It's one of the hardest things to do, and it never stops. It's not like someday you wake up and your imagination isn't right there waiting for some big, fat, ugly emotion to come up and trigger some thought pattern about some imaginative thing that isn't in the senses. What I did with my friend was I took the direct mirror, where I wasn't going to let my imagination run away with itself. And I basically ho'oponopono'd, which is, I'm sorry, forgive me, thank you, and I love you. And got back into present moment. Because what else can we do? I can't make somebody see something differently. I can't, I spoke up and said that wasn't correct, but
I think our perception, not always what happens to us, but it's how we perceive it ourselves. And from that perception, we act upon that perception, and that action then may or may not be the one that would have been for the highest good of me, the other person, or anybody involved. And by the way, all this cutting up of all this tree, that's the neighbor I've had all the issues with, Barbara. I'm out there cutting it all up. It's not my tree that's all split, and I'm helping her. She's speaking to me now. This is like, okay. At first, I wasn't going to do that. I kind of made up my mind. My charity only goes so far, because I'd already done a whole bunch last week and never see her doing anything. Just always, how can I get somebody else to do it for me or help me with it? So I'm really working hard at letting go of that and putting forth the person that I want to be, that I'm striving to be through these situations, constantly seeing things that are moving in what I would consider a positive direction, as far as us cohabitating next door to each other.
Right. And if we're coming back to imagination, that when we're aligned to compassion and we're in it, we're committed to doing the good of the whole, and we're taking care of ourselves, then when we go, okay, what should I do? Because the intellect isn't trying to use its imagination to decide that this woman has done this, or you can't have this, or all that stuff that happens. And you're just going, what should I do? And it says, go help her. And then you just go help her, because it doesn't have to be any big decision-making thing, in your head. You don't have to go through a lot of, should I or shouldn't I? It's just like, because you're in this state.
It's where I was. I did it. Then while I was doing it, sometimes my mind wanted to go where it didn't,
Yeah.
But then I kept trying to bring myself back into, if this were me, I would want somebody to help me.
And it makes you feel better. You feel better. So
Mhm.
you're more tuned into how you're feeling. They said to me one time, or I was in a channel somewhere, taking care of yourself really includes taking care of your thought processes. We know this. Your thoughts, your feelings, your emotions, all of it. Most people, when you say that, take care of yourself, most people think of your physical body, I think, right? And get enough sleep, eat well, relax or whatever. But the idea of taking care of your thoughts and processing, not staying in that, with the wild horses in that, that's foreign to most people, I would say. And I would say most people don't live in the present, right? If you're fearful and if you're anxious, you're worried about the future, or you're stuck in the past, I've been doing more studies with the German New Medicine, which we now call German Healing Knowledge. And I asked someone who worked directly with Dr. Hammer, who researched all of this, how many conflicts do people walk around with on average? Either in a conflicted state, or they're in a healing state of a conflict, or back and forth. They said average 10. We're all walking around with an average of 10 active and healing conflicts at any given time. Because of the cultures we live in, we're not just in harmony with nature out there in the bush, and
Well, and I might say that might be a normal thing. We've proven with conflict revolution that we can reduce the amount of conflict in our lives by a great deal.
Mm-hmm.
But I think the other part of what the work that we do is that it's that process, like the washing machine cycle. It's just what happens. Conflict comes, we run it through the cycle, and then we transform it. And this is getting back to what I was saying about you, Linda, and the lady next door, is the creative solutions that are for the good of the whole become the most important piece of, because like you said, Joanne, this is a cacophony. If imagination is bringing all of this knowledge, and knowledge is that thing, I have the knowledge that this is a chair. And imagination is what then is applied to the knowledge to make it come to life. There's this wonderful quote the angels had years ago. You can have all the divinity. You can have all the answers. You can have all the knowledge right here at your fingertips in all of the universe. In fact, it is there for you. But if you do not choose to pick up your power, all of that is for naught. All of the knowledge sits on the shelves and gathers dust while the world beats itself to death. What will it take to get you to stand up? So imagination is what makes us pick up that book, read the book, decide to take that next step. And what did he say? Imagination embraces the entire world, stimulating progress, giving birth to evolution. It's like God, almost. Kind of. Not really. It has the power to.
Yeah, like you're nowhere without it, in other words, like, right? It's such a key element, and it's nebulous. Like people, they say, oh, you're imagining things, or, she has a very overactive imagination, daydreaming, or whatever people kind of negate or try and, put down or minimize. And that has especially been true with this focus on the intellect being the all-important knowledge, the intellect, the degrees, and more I'm observing how all of these intellectual people are just lost because they don't have the emotional connection, and they've not cultivated that, and that's part of growing up in these cultures. Yeah.
So knowledge is a state or fact of knowing, familiarity, awareness, or understanding gained through experience or study.
Yeah.
So that which is known. So there's what you know, and then what you do with that knowledge. And it's that old metaphor they use all the time of you can go into the library and read all these books about flying.
Yeah.
You can even sit at the thing and pretend you're at the cockpit and pretend you're flying, and that's one thing. But going out onto the tarmac, getting in that plane is a whole nother physical experience with the senses. So there seems to be this tie-in between the imagination spurring this all on to create the separation, right? Because here we have separation. I mean, you're there and I'm here. So is what is in the senses then no longer imagination? Now it's something else? See what I mean? Like if imagination is creating something that's not present, giving image to that's not present. Yeah. These are the questions that got me kicked out of catechism.
Exactly. And connected to Einstein.
Yeah, right. Joseph Campbell, he's the one that said, imagination is what makes sense of the senseless. So that's almost saying it's giving sense. Well, it is. Imagination is part of what's creating our senses that are then being able to perceive the separation. Anyway.
I think we don't know what anybody else is going through. And that's where I've been working at. Understanding my neighbor is that I don't know everything that's gone on in her life. I don't know all the things that have made her the way she is. I think that that's where I'm working right now, is trying to let go of what I think or perceive to be proper action on her part. I guess I was hoping that we were all going to become better humans, and I worry whether or not we are, but I can only work and worry about I becoming a better human.
So let's just take a moment, close our eyes, center ourselves right where we're sitting. Take a deep breath in And exhale. And continue to breathe in that fashion. And as you do, use your imagination to create an image of an office space. Put it in the place of your brain. In your head, see whatever kind of office would feel comfortable to you. Some people might have an old roll-top desk with a lot of wood. Someone else might be sleek and metal and modern. Someone else might be overstuffed chair and comfort. Now use your imagination. Go into your heart, where your intuition is, and see yourself in an auditorium getting ready for a musical concert. Imagine yourself there sitting in the audience, looking at the stage, waiting for the show to begin. And the third place is go into your gut, deep into that emotional territory. And picture yourself in the most relaxed state possible. So whether you're in a hot tub or sometimes after you do a labor of love for a very long period of time and collapse in exhaustion and joy of creation, you're able to let go and release and be in a state of very few thoughts, not even a lot of feelings, just being, just the I am. And so we will command that only the most divine light shine down upon you at this time, and the greatest good be present here. We are so excited to talk with you today about imagination. And not just why it's more important than knowledge, but to help to get into some of these questions that you've been asking about the power of the imagination and how the imagination works within the different levels of consciousness. This is a deep topic because the process of forming an image that isn't perceived by the five senses is part of most of the machinations of the operating system that we've been teaching you. The imagination is an after effect of compassion, shall we say? That just like compassion impels energy to create circular domains that surround the mathematics in the source, which is everything, of the finite physical world that you are going to experience. Compassion takes that compilation of consciousness that it's just imagined because it's not in the senses, and aligns it to true north of the earth. So all of you are going to have this same experience of north, east, south, west, dimensional. So you're all aligned together as one, but separate, because imagination was able to create an image, the original image of what is going to be projected into that lens. It's still in the chaotic form, though, even in that compilation of consciousness that surrounds all the mathematics in the center of the earth of what you're going to be. Even sitting in your chair right now, there's this part of you in the center of the earth. that's going through this creation process. So that close, that deep, you get imagination bringing into form a compilation, aligning it to the compilation of the earth, and then connecting it to all the separate parts, because you are one, but there's infinite separate parts that are part of that whole. Just like there are 3 human dimensions that are a part of your whole. And as the wave travels out of the source and into that first realm of emotion, it's imagination that is listening to the knowledge in that emotion, because that emotion, aside from your human feelings, as they transpose down towards the lens and they just become your feelings, emotion with a capital E. This is all of the math. It's the table, it's the computer, it's the universe. The whole entire mathematics of the entire universe exists on that level of your being. And it's chaos. It's a cacophony of creation. And imagination of compassion is impelling. And imagination is that next step that is actually, like the intellect, creating physical form and images. And what it first does is it sweeps through emotion and listens. I am a chair. I am Barbara. I am the sky. I am the tree. And it, on its, the wave moving up into the intuition where sound is born, you begin to hear that cacophony of creation in the whole universe. It's impossible chaos. And then when it gets up into the intellect, starting on the subatomic level, you begin to have the crossover into the projected replication of what's in the source, the projected replication of what's being flowing up that wave within you. And the intellect begins with hearing I am a chair, and then revolves that around to be that is a chair, that is a tree, that is a computer, that is a universe outside of me. And that's the conscious range it's moving into, where you can consciously hear the thoughts in your head. So by the time you get to that place of the conscious level of human hearing, it is so chaotic, but it is just really a very small part of the incredible cacophony of knowledge that's coming up through you, helping to create your physical body, create the senses, do the 180-degree revolution, project the whole thing out there into the inside curvature of your compilation like a movie theater, and then have all those images come back to that human body that was created with these senses to now perceive the reality. So imagination does all that. It's not as if what's in the lens is now not imagination. It's just that all of this is being created to create the lens of human existence. All of this process is what it takes to have a human experience. We want to talk a little bit about the relationship between imagination and free will. Obviously, imagination has a part in everything that goes on in the operating system. When your body dies, there is still imagination, very much so in afterlife, creating images that are not perceived by the senses, because the consciousness that you have after you lose your body doesn't require the senses. It's a different kind of operation than the lens. We want to go back to imagination and free will, because this is where a lot of the trouble begins. We've always said that we have come here to help tame the intellect, because most everything else would work very well if the intellect were tamed and mastered to be a part of the system, to choose to function in its role as a part of the system. Because intellect has the free will capacity, that's the whole idea of all of this, is to get the intellect to fall in line with what it's supposed to be doing. But the egotistical part gets triggered by the emotional part, and then intellectual messages flood the intellect. Imagination takes over, free will gets jostled around. Those of you who are studying how to use your free will for the greatest good, starting with yourself, are more than just the seeds that are planting this movement. You are opening up pathways of reality. If it can happen for you, it can happen for others. As society and culture seems to be devolving, that's the pressure that is forcing people to consciously evolve. Just like those of us who watch you with free wills, use your free will to beat yourself up. We also know that by observing yourself and learning about yourself and choosing to take this journey, that you are literally and figuratively, more than just in your imagination, in your flesh, in your senses, in present moment, you're creating that reality. People won't know what they want or need. It's not that people are going to be crying out for processes to help them get to know themselves better. They, like all of you who go through crisis, are going to be forced. And some won't make it. And some will experience whatever those who are not aligned to compassion are going to experience through this change. You, as those who are doing this, have to know that staying with yourself, learning to live an intuitive life, taking the time to care what your intellect is doing with your free will, and being masters of your own lives, that's changing the world. What else are you going to do? Succumb to the culture? No. We tell you, you can't perceive how important this work is that you're doing. You can't perceive the depths of roots that you're doing, because you don't see all the millions of other people who are doing the same thing in their own enclaves, in their own individual selves. And that network is hard to see sometimes, but you have to know it's there. And so imagination is driving people right now to the edge of an abyss. And those people with the imaginations who could work for the good of the whole, who would use their imagination to create magic, who would use imagination to create new ways to forgive, new ways to contribute positively, not decide what somebody needs and go take care of them, but really listening to what someone really truly needs and then delivering that little piece to them. That is a much more powerful act of kindness than thinking that you're going to go in and take care of everybody's needs, but you're going to say what they are. It's also less stressful because you don't overwork yourself. And meanwhile, you're doing the same with yourself. You're taking a constant pulse. Constant. It might be throughout the day, the whole day sometimes. What do you need? What do I need right now? What does my intuition want from me? And having less and less of an opinion. That's what we'd like to use your imagination to do with free will, is to imagine that the less that you think you know, the more that you are opening up for the compassion to manifest through you and not get caught in any of that cacophony of imagination and free will. Let that manifestation be bigger than any thoughts that you could ever have. So when you're looking at how to change some of those relationships that are mostly in your imagination, those relationships that are with people from the past that maybe you haven't seen, maybe you do see them, but you have conflict with them, make the decision to not construct images. Instead, take your conflict, imagine you're in that theater in your heart, and you're sitting out in the audience and you're watching the play, whatever the drama is, whatever the drama that you're the narrator in your head. Well, they did this and they said that, and you're watching the play. And it's your job as the director to come out with a creative solution to the protagonists and antagonists on the stage. So if you're having a conflict with your friend who it makes assumptions and based on those wrong assumptions have walked away for whatever reasons, see it on the stage and see yourself playing the part of that person who wants to really do the highest good. It lets you still have control in the seat in the director's chair. And it lets you still be that actor on the stage who has those feelings, but you're always working to the greatest good ending. And that's the imagination that we want to help instill in you as a daily practice, and understanding imagination as such a great piece of power of compassion, the workman of compassion, the work people. And use it to create great things, and monitor yourself to see when your imagination is taking over, and then choose to fill that up with something more positive and powerful and regenerative for the good of all. So we'll be happy to open for questions or conversation. Our mission to teach you how to do these things via conflict resolution and channeling and listening to yourself. It's been because we've known this transformation is coming. We've wanted to give you what we've sometimes thought about as lifeboats to maneuver your way through it, to be the new humanity. And even if you feel like you're one of the ones that threw yourself up on onto the shore, the fish that were evolving into mammals, even if you threw yourself up on the shore and you don't make it, You're a part of a movement that isn't going to stop. This is the time for everyone to come face to face with who they are, because that is the only person that you're going to have to be concerned with when all of this, your life is over. It's not going to be anyone who said anything to you. It'll be you and yourself. A lot of people will be in the review because obviously, but if you have the tools, if you don't have the tools, now is the time. And you only have to be concerned about your own relationship to yourself and your self-love, and know that everyone else is being given that same opportunity, and their free will is in that process. So it's almost like you're watching, you're all sitting there on the shore. Some of you are making it and some of you aren't. Using an imagination to create a loving, long view, so you don't get trapped in the suffering of the moment, to keep that long view in mind. And use your imagination to see yourself as big and whole and full and deep and rich as you possibly can. And then there'll be places for you to help. And you can only do so much, even though you have the whole universe inside you. Humans can only do so much. Give yourself that latitude based on what your needs are to keep yourself whole and happy and healthy. And then watch and be amazed, although this isn't the end of the reading. So, questions, conversation?
Hi, Jojo here. I missed about 20-25 minutes because my computer froze, but I'm glad I picked it up again and about 11 to hear what you have been saying about imagination and creating in new ways to forgive, to contribute positively. Yeah, I'm keen to listen to the whole channel and what I missed in the conversation too. So I'm just going to say thank you, and I'm sure I'll have more insights when I listen. Thank you.
Yes, and you will find it fascinating. And we feel as if our next gathering in the following Saturday will be specifically addressing the gifts of conflict. In that conversation, it will carry on with what we've been talking about here about the power of the imagination and bringing that power of imagination into conflict. So, of course, feel free to bring any questions or conversations to our next gathering.
Thank you. I will. And having studied conflict for many years from a German medicine perspective, there's a great deal of value to be had when you recognize what's happening and how to use the additional perspectives or insights, behaviors that conflict can bring.
Yes, and most humans don't completely understand the depths to which conflicts reverberate and how powerful in these small ways be resolving them on a regular basis to go on to create a better life for oneself, because that is, you have the whole universe within you. So you will be projecting the entire universe out in that way. And because it is a shared experience, there's only one of us here, then that can have deep impact wherever you go.
That's for sure. I think people don't realize the kind of impact they have, in any given lifetime, never mind combinations of lifetimes or alternate, consecutive, concurrent, lifetimes. That's such a big picture, but yeah, even in any given lifetime, to observe how others affect us and how we affect others and how conflicts arise. Yeah. Thank you.
Yes, and that cacophony that we talk about is the cacophony of creation. And what you're talking about with many different lives that you're channeling through you energetically, different civilizations that you've experienced in these different lives. This is a huge cacophony of knowledge, that firsthand experience that you're getting. And so all of that is even a subset of the whole, because ultimately, if you're the whole, then you're absolutely everything and everyone. Past lives, quote unquote, or even we call them concurrent lives, they're just subsets of what could be coming through you, but we don't want to blow everybody's tubes out with all that force of energy. You take what you can digest, your capacity. And when you do things like consciousness expansion, like you have been doing, part of that is studying yourself. Part of that is the meditation and clearing the mind. When you do that kind of self-expansion, then you open yourself up for more capacity, for more knowledge to come through you. And then the imagination becomes the saving grace of organization. And when we said earlier, Barbara mentioned compartmentalism is neither good nor bad. It's part of how things look separate, because things are compartmentalized into their mathematics to be chairs and computers and trees. People sometimes create compartments so they don't have to deal with other things in their life. We're talking about using it as a beautiful interactive storage system to where you know where things are in their compartments. And it's not that you're hiding from them. It's just that sometimes when you're in the present moment with your senses, and the 5 senses, you don't need to deal with what happened when you were a child. Imagination is such a powerful force in all of creation. We will close the channel at this time to once again say thank you so very much for giving us a voice and lending your ears and your thoughts. We're really laying a groundwork this year. We're weaving in some deep roots, getting a repetitive gathering helps all of us to keep together during these critical times of change. And they are critical times. You don't realize that you're basically in a war zone, everyone in the world, with the potential of nuclear war looming. Everyone lives in a war zone. You may not be on the front lines like some are. You may be far behind the lines, but the earth's still feeling this change, this upheaval. How you survive it is up to you. How you thrive in it is absolutely there for you, for the taking. And thriving for you reflects for the planet and many other people. So continue to find ways to thrive, and then just watch and be amazed. Namaste. I love how it came out of your question last week and then it turned into this thing. It's like, it feels sort of major to me, you know?
Yeah.
Because it's like a piece of that when they were saying, I don't know if you were here for the part where they were talking about compassion has these 3 things it does, right? It impels energy to create this compilation, this membrane. Then it aligns it to true north. And then it makes us all cognizant that we're all one, like we're all connected. So separate but equal. So imagination becomes this tool, like this worker thing within compassion that is a little more functional than the overarching compassion. I don't know. I have to listen back to it.
There
Do
was
you-
definitely a lot here. I start a note and then I just leave a blank space. So when I go back and listen, I can fill in that part because that was something that I picked up on. There was a lot here this go round.
And I think that's why I love listening to it like over and over, like several times, because it's like, wait a minute. And did I hear that? No, I didn't hear that. It's a lot. All right, my friends, next week, the gifts of conflict. All right. I love you guys.
Okay. Love you too.
Hey,
Bye.
have a good week.
You too.